I'm endlessly fascinated and curious about the world around us, about business, about politics, about the arts, about culture, developments, social issues, and the people. Most importantly, about the people that are shaping our future. Every night, I get the opportunity to have conversations, to dive into conversations with thought leaders, with change makers, entrepreneurs, politicians, and everyday heroes who unpack the ideas and stories that I think matter to all of us. What's the future of our economy? What's the future of our country? How do we build stronger communities? What can we learn from music, theater, sports, politics, the arts? How does policy shape our real lives? What does leadership look like, real leadership in today's environment? If it's interesting and relevant and topical and we're talking about it, you'll hear about it here at 6 o'clock on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I want to have real conversations, in-depth conversations. These are ideas we're sharing. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Thanks for joining me. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Eric Katz with me today. We're going to talk about immigration. I think it's one of those issues that, lots of people have been talking about, confused about, and so I thought it would be great to have someone who's an expert in this area. Eric Katz has been practicing as an immigration consultant since 1995. He's a member with the College of Immigration and Citizenship Consultants. His practice is primarily in the corporate and business sector, where he deals with work permits for executives, skilled workers, and skilled trades. Most of his business clients are small and medium-sized enterprises in the construction, IT, manufacturing, restaurant, and grocery businesses. Eric, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Pleasure to have you. So we're going to talk a little bit about exactly what you do and how you do it. But sure. I wanted to just sort of take a step back for everyone because, the sort of the image that we have is that we had a good immigration system that for whatever reason we ramped up dramatically with foreign students and temporary workers and maybe just basic immigrants. It got too much and now we've scaled it back dramatically. Tell me, what's happened in the last 5 years or decade from a number of immigrants and the way the immigrants have been coming in. Give us a sort of a 60,000, 30,000 high foot
Sure.
overview of the environment.
Okay, well, I guess let's go back 5.5 years, February, March 2020, when COVID sort of came on the scene, and the country basically had shut down by the middle of March. The office towers emptied, the manufacturing people went home, government workers went home, and there was no processing probably for 2 or 3 months because the government was trying to get a handle, not just on the safety issue, but how were they going to have people process cases from home. There may have been now and again you could work from home, but now everybody was home. So I'm not even sure that all of them had computers at home. Up until that time, we had quite what I would say, a very functional system. We knew what the upcoming changes would be in advance of them becoming effective, usually a 30 days advance. We were processing, in terms of permanent residents, probably 250,000 people a year. Maybe 300,000, sometimes less than 250, because we didn't have, a lot of the changes that happened during COVID. But also, I feel that the file was not really managed well from the government side at the time, or the previous government. And you have to think of, when things stopped, they had to figure a way to start, keep the economy going. So we have a situation where you're going from 250 to 350,000 people coming in a year. Then you've got various refugee situations in Afghanistan and Syria and other areas. So our traditional, let's call it humanitarian and compassionate ground obligations were never really as high as they were. 40,000 people from Afghanistan, 20,000 or more from Syria. So you can see the numbers coming very high.
How many from Ukraine?
Well, Ukraine, I think the difference between Ukraine is they were given the opportunity, anybody who had a Ukrainian passport, either living in the Ukraine, if they could get out. We believe that at one time there maybe have been up to 60, 80,000 people across the country. So the way that file worked was if you wanted to come to Canada, all you had to do would be file a visitor visa at the embassy, and it would be granted, and then you could get your work permit at the airport. So on the one hand, it was humanitarian compassionate, but the people who got their work permit at the airport were not considered refugees. They were given long-term work permits, and they've been extended, and a lot of people integrated quickly. Obviously, we have a long history of 5, 6 generations of Ukrainian Canadians or Canadians, and the government did the right thing at the time, and there was a lot of support from the Canadian community as well as the Ukrainian community. So I don't know if I would include them in the permanent resident category, because the numbers I gave you were based on permanent residents, not on temporary residents.
So 250 to 300,000 permanent residents a year.
Yeah,
And then you talked about 20, 40, 60,000
yeah,
refugees, then 60 to 80,000
yeah,
people from Ukraine. And then we've heard about temporary students, temporary foreign workers, and
yeah.
students. Tell me how big those are.
So the again, that sort of got out of control. I think it was, the fees that the colleges and universities were charging were basically funding, debt for the colleges and universities to be debt free. So what happened was there was no cap on students, and then all of a sudden you have 1 million students in the country. Not all of them were actually going to school. There were a lot of private colleges that opened up and said, well, we'll give you your diploma. We're charging you the same as, U of T or York, and you'll get this diploma and you'll get a work permit.
I met with a private college person who said, we were doing a really good thing. We were educating these people. We were giving them good diplomas. We were, addressing a segment of society that the universities weren't addressing, giving them skills. And then I've heard other people say it was a complete fraud. It was just a way of people coming in and getting their permanent residency. What's your sense of things?
Well, I think all of it's true. I mean, there definitely were some genuine private colleges that were giving people technical skills so they could, graduate and work in the Canadian economy. But there were also a lot of what I call the travel schools, travel and tourism schools, where people weren't even going there. They would pay their $10,000 or $15,000. The only people who were benefiting were the private colleges, and everybody knew it, both in the government, the other consultants and lawyers that I know. And this information was spread around all of the world. And so what happened was you then got such a huge amount of people coming. You also had the housing crisis of people being charged $1,000 to sleep on the floor. So maybe you had a 2-bedroom condo. There could be like 8, 10, 12 people in there. So
Hold it. Seriously? 8 to 10 people?
Yeah.
In a 1-bedroom condo?
No, two bedroom. You might have 3 mattresses on each in each bedroom, and then a bunch in the living room. So, this was abused by the landlords. The students, whether they were legitimate or not, were being ripped off. And so the government had to do something, say, we just can't handle from an infrastructure point of view, we can't handle this amount of people.
Okay, and so what's happened is they've dramatically reduced that, and now you've got university and colleges, very reputable ones, saying that they can't meet budget anymore because they needed those foreign students and the higher tuitions they were paying. So have we gone too far one way, too far the other way? What's your sense of things?
Well, this is directed. My wife was teaching at the business faculty at Centennial College in Scarborough, and she said, "Do you think I'll lose my job?" I said, "Well, you can't lose it if you find another one." And she was her specialty is logistics, and so she found a logistics job in the private sector. But it really, when I say it was mismanaged, also it was ramp it up quickly and then close it down. And in fact, what happened was they were looking at reducing it to 650,000 students, and they only got 450,000 students because the students no longer consider Canada to be a reliable country to come to if they're going to shift the ground underneath them halfway through their studies. So there's got to be a better way. I think, unfortunately, the bona fide private schools that may have been, thrown in the bin. It was unfair to them, but I guess they had to come up with a quick solution because, it's as much economic as it is political. The Canadian people are seeming somewhat reticent on their generosity of bringing people in from overseas.
Okay, so let me stop and ask you there for a
Yeah,
second. So,
yeah,
I think the politics was such that there was a huge amount of opposition to all these, private colleges that were seemingly
yeah,
just a way of bringing people in so that they could get their credentials and then permanent residency, et cetera. It was seen
yeah,
as a fraud. And as you say, then it was reduced, and the students didn't want to come because they didn't see that the government regulation was trustworthy and long term.
yeah,
And there wasn't, other than these private colleges and some universities that are arguing that
yeah,
they're going to have budget problems, there wasn't a lot of negative reaction to it. Compare that to the United States, where Donald Trump put in this provision that if you disagreed with them, Harvard and other places, that they would no longer give the foreign student visas, and that they would kick all these students out of the country halfway through their programs. And I'll make it personal. I went to Harvard.
yeah,
I was there on an H-1 visa,
yeah,
and I would have been kicked out based on the current Trump rules halfway through my education. And a lot of people wanted to go. I wanted to go to the United States to get what I deemed to be a great education.
hmm,
The left wing, the progressives,
hmm,
rose up in arms about how terrible this was. That this was a real harm to the American economy. That 57% of all of the venture capital companies in Silicon Valley have been started by people that were in the United States on
yeah,
H-1 visas, student visas.
yeah.
So, what's the reality? Are we overreacting in Canada? Is the United States overreacting? Is some student visas right? Is no like, where do you come out on this? It seems like the public agreed, disagreed with what the government in Canada was doing, and then agreed when they dramatically reduced it, and yet the public in the United States had the opposite.
Well, the first thing I have to say is um, Trump's mother was from Scotland, and his two of his wives were immigrants or are immigrants also. So my feeling is, as a Canadian,
And
both
his
of
kids
our
are anchor babies, aren't they? Yeah,
so, yeah. Well, that's that. Yeah, we could talk about that too, but I didn't really prepare for that, but I can advise on that. Um, Canada, without a doubt, was built by immigrants. Whether it was the Scottish and the English, coming here 250 years ago, or if you have, there's a lot of entrepreneurs coming from different parts of Asia, India, China, Singapore. They're coming here, they're studying here, and they're legitimate, and they're going into areas that will build the country. So when you look at the Silicon Valley, when you look at the GTA or Southern Ontario, I think we're the third largest cluster of information technology professionals in North America. And so, how can we say we don't want immigrants where these are the people with, there's Canadians too, but we're in a competitive world. We need these people. I think the feeling in the US now, it's severe to vicious, basically. what they're doing to the students. Even like you take the Harvard example, well, the Princess of Sweden, I think, was going to have to come to the University of Toronto because she was a foreigner. So, I mean, it's sort of like de facto racism. I don't think we're at that point in Canada. I really hope we're not. But I do think we need to encourage people to come to Canada, and somehow they're going to have to reach out to the international community, which it's not a free for all. It's just like you just can't come here and say, like a previous prime minister did, and said, "We want you, come here." And so everybody came here. And I forgot to mention the people coming from South America by foot. We still have an agreement with the U.S. It's called the third party agreement with respect to refugees. So if you step foot in the U.S., you cannot shop around countries. That's where you have to make your claim. But what happened was either they arrest them and let them go, and they came to Canada. That agreement specifically states you make a claim at the border at an official crossing. So somebody down the line said, just go to Lacolle, Quebec, and just walk across Farmer Brown's farm, and you can make an application inside Canada. Because once you're inside Canada, you can make that claim. And I think what happened, you had people sleeping in the Olympic Stadium. You had the government buying or leasing hotels. So again, we have our international obligations. We must meet those obligations, but we also have to have a file managed responsibly by the government because the system's been totally overburdened. And one of the things I think we'll talk about later is, so the morale and the ability of the department to manage these things cause massive backlogs. I think we're up to the new the 3-year forecast for people was up to 475 I think the prime minister said 500,000 at the time. And we're looking at each other in our office going, this is going to be total chaos. And you're putting the lives of people in jeopardy because we don't have a medical system we don't have enough doctors. We don't have enough hospitals. I mean, they're building that massive hospital in Mississauga, which is amazing. But we need more infrastructure. If we're going to take in that many people, we have to find jobs for them too.
Okay, so you're saying a couple of things. You're saying that we're the third largest concentration of
IT.
IT people
Yeah,
in the Greater Toronto Area, southwestern Ontario.
yeah,
And so we need immigrants. That immigrants have built Canada. But then
yeah,
at the same time, you're saying 500,000 is too many because we don't have enough housing, we don't have enough jobs, we don't have enough hospitals, we don't have enough healthcare. And so the government appears to have scaled back immigration fairly dramatically.
yeah, yeah.
What's the right number? What's the right strategy?
Well, I think we have to, again, you talk about the 360 view, the drone view, because immigration doesn't exist in a vacuum. Immigration touches every part of the economy. So we know from the new prime minister, he stated publicly, which is effectively a promise to me, and I hope he doesn't break it, that they want to unlock the energy sector. They want to focus on infrastructure in the country. They want to focus on AI, defense, and aerospace. So if that's what they want, that becomes more of a supply demand, model, which I think is a better model than what we've had, the point system. You give somebody with a PhD that may not have any relevance. Maybe it'll have relevance to being a professor, but I think there's enough Canadians going to grad school that can fill all the professorships. We need we need skilled trades, we need scientists. We're already courting a lot of scientists from the United States to come up and teach here in AI areas because there's cybersecurity threats everywhere. So I think it's a decision is like, if the passing score to get into Canada from overseas is 500 points, and then you get a bunch of people in their early 30s with 6 years experience, a master's and a PhD, they're the ones that are going to make it in. But what about the skilled trades? I
So you
personally
think
feel
that
this.
you think we're recruiting or at least allowing in the wrong types of people? That's the problem. We got to take a break for some messages.
Okay.
In 2 minutes with Eric Katz talking about the state of our immigration system in Canada. Stay with everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've got Eric Katz with me today. He's an immigration consultant. Eric, if people want to access your services, is there a website they should go to?
Yes, the website is www.migrationtocanada.com.
Migrationtocanada.com.
.com, yeah.
Okay, great. We were just talking about the point system. I've had a professor who studied the immigration system in Canada on my show, and she described Canada as one of the best systems worldwide. That Australia, New Zealand, the UK, etc., came to Canada to study the Canadian point system and thought it was great. You're now saying it's not great. So tell me, I think take a step back and explain to everyone, if you could, what the point system is and what you think pros and the cons of how it's implemented are.
Okay. Well, first of all, I just want to comment from an academic and a theoretical point of view, it is the best system. And I know for a fact that there's been a lot of excursions from Canada to the Australia, the UK, but we have to talk about reality. We have to talk about what is happening, what I call at the retail level. I'm talking about businesses. Businesses provide jobs for human beings. And when you say it's the best on paper, I think it is. But we live in a fast changing economy. How are we going to supply the people to these mega projects that the Prime Minister wants to do? So are we building or are we not building a pipeline across the country to secure our energy? If you are, I don't care how many billions you throw at these projects, you need human beings on site to install this stuff, to build it, to repair it. You need all kinds of skilled people. And again, I think there cannot be a disconnect between the theory and the academic side and the reality. There has to be a meeting in the middle because you have to have program integrity. So on that side, I'm all for it. How do you do it? That's up to the policy wonks in Ottawa.
So the criticism that some people have given me is that there's too many points given to education, not given enough points for real world experience.
Yeah.
I'm not given enough points for English language capabilities and having, or French language capabilities.
Yeah.
And therefore having language capabilities ends up being one of the most important things to getting a job and integrating into society.
Yeah.
And then the other criticism that I've had is that, and I don't know if this is true or not, but people have told me that Australia gives a lot of points if you've got a job offer before you come to the country, and Canada doesn't allow you to have a job offer before you come to the country, or maybe it doesn't just give any points for that. So can you address those issues, please?
Well, now you're hitting the heart of the practice that I do. So yes, we had actually, I've got my notes somewhere. I forget the actual date that it was implemented, but I'll just talk about the facts. So Canada gave for basically senior managers and executives coming to Canada to be the head of the company, or VPs, very senior managers, they would get 200 bonus points as soon as the document's called an LMIA, a labor market impact assessment, is basically a legal opinion given by Service Canada stating that there is a shortage of people in this area. So they would either come on an LMIA or they would come through intercompany transfers. So that's for the executives. For the rank and file people, either skilled trades or professors, etc., if they had an offer of employment, a valid offer of employment, meaning they'd have a job when they got here, they would get 50 points. Getting people through the permanent residence system is very difficult. But those people who had those extra 50 points may mean the difference of getting in or not getting in. The 200 points for the senior managers, you're definitely getting PR if you want. Because let's face it, if you're coming from any part of the world and you've got kids, they're in the school system, people are sort of reticent to leave the country. They like it here. And we need to keep people like that. We need to retain people like that. Okay, so there's the attracting of people to Canada, but there's the retaining of people. 2 weeks ago, I was referred somebody who is the CEO of a major international food business, and they've been here for a year. They love it here. They don't want to go back. Their kids are in college here, and they say, we know we might not be able to get permanent residence. I said, that's correct. When did you come in? They said, December last year. I said, well, I think it was November that the government took away those bonus points. And they said, well, why did they do that? And I basically answer them saying, well, first the government does passes the legislation, and then they do their research afterwards. So how can we encourage people with some of these policies? So again, how do we fix this? Because the system, I wouldn't say it's broken. Some people would say it's broken, but I would say it's somewhere between function and dysfunction. And only one person, we need leadership in the country. We need a vision. And I think we do need these programs that were similar to, post World War II, when you had all these programs that got people working. Because if we don't, I don't know really what's going to happen. As a Canadian citizen, I'm really concerned, like most people are. There's a lot of uncertainty, and I don't think we're going to hear from the senior ministers until probably after Labor Day. According to an article I read on CBC on my phone, the Minister of Energy said that they will be rolling out all their plans on a weekly basis.
It's almost as if you don't think the immigration system is the problem. It's getting people jobs that's the problem, and creating the economic opportunities that's the challenge.
I do, because how else we hear stories of people, they can't find a job, or they can't find a house, or there's something there. We need to get them jobs. They need to be good paying jobs. And that's how we're going to retain people to grow the country. Because again, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's totally related. How do we stop this increase of taxes on everything we do as soon as we walk out the door? You can't just keep raising taxes, because you'll get an underground economy. And if you widen the tax base with good paying jobs, then you'll be able to be, fiscally responsible.
Okay, so let me ask you a question. We had this big report. I think that this guy from Barton from McKinsey was the one that persuaded Trudeau for it, that we needed to grow over time to 100 million people from the 40 million people that we got. And one of his rationales, I understand, was something along the lines of, when I was graduating from university, there were 5 people working for every one person that was a senior on old age pensions and using the healthcare and all that kind of stuff. Today, there's 2 people working for every one person that is in seniors. And it's because our retirement age hasn't gone up. People are working longer, but it hasn't legally gone up. People are living longer. Our healthcare costs are going up. The baby boom is getting into the seniors' years. And then we're going to have this huge amount of population that are going to be demanding big money in long-term care and healthcare and pensions, et cetera, and a lot less people working. And so therefore, the only way to solve that is by immigration, because our birth rate has gone down. We're below replacement percentages right now. We're not birthing enough young people to keep our population growing or even stable on its own. And so therefore, the only answer to this challenge, such that we don't have massive tax increases on the young to fund the old, is by bringing in immigrants. What do you say to that? Is that true, or is that?
When I hear the head of this person and the head of that company, we're talking theories, and you have to look what is realistic. You cannot force real estate developers, and I know you know something about real estate. you cannot force them to build buildings or homes for all these people to live in. There has to be, the tone has to be set by the government. So if the government says, here's what we're going to do to grow the country, say by 2 to 3% a year, which is, I don't think that's manageable. But if it is, everybody has to buy in. It's a cultural buy-in as much as it's an economic buy-in. So yes, we need to grow. We're definitely we're on our way to 50 million. But the thing is, we are so far behind in the infrastructure. We can't just like say, come to Canada, it's a great place. We have to say, come to Canada. If you're a professional, check with the college or whoever the regulatory body is in the province, because you might not be able to work in your profession. So I'm totally pro immigration, but we need to make it welcoming when they get here, not just the advertising beforehand.
So I interviewed someone who said immigration wasn't the problem; it was a planning problem. That our immigration statistics weren't reflected in our housing statistics, our job statistics, or at least our strategies. And so it sounds like you agree that immigration has been sort of complained as the problem, but it's not necessarily immigration. It sounds to me like you actually think immigration really is needed, but what we didn't do is have jobs for them, have housing for them, and have the right way of integrating them into our society. Is that fair?
I would agree with you 100% on that. The planning, I don't know how they do the planning, but I do know that there's the morale, as I mentioned before, of the actual officers on the front line. It's like, okay, we're changing this, and these people can't come in anymore because they don't have the points. So you kill that package, and then you kill another package by reducing the numbers. I think the numbers that the current regime in Ottawa is suggesting, they're reasonable reductions. Okay, but the planning, they really have to look at the planning and the research, and that has to be done with stakeholders. Like, I would probably trust the banks more on their economic forecasts than I would somebody in Ottawa, unless it's the governor of the bank. But we can't just paint lovely flowers and pictures of meadows. We have to tell them, here's the way it is. You come to Canada, you may not like your first job, but you need to get some experience and then, and move on from that. So we need a mixture of people with good academic credentials, good skill trades, but we also need some people, in the hotel and tourism industry has been decimated. We need people that are chefs and cooks. These are skilled trades, and they should not be discriminated against because they don't have a master's degree or a language skill as high as somebody with more fluency.
We're going to take a break for some messages, and when I come back, I'm going to do a firing round and ask Eric Katz, our guest, an immigration consultant, a couple of questions about some of the sort of the rumors and the different policies that you hear. See what he has to say, because I think we have, as Eric said, thankfully not have a racist attitude toward immigration, and the country has been built on immigration, but we have had a lot of negativity toward immigration, and I think it has been housing related, it has been education, college related, it's been job related, and so thankfully it hasn't got to the way it is in the United States that appears to be racist, but we're at risk of that, and so we got to make sure that we manage our systems right. Stay with us, everyone. Back in 2 minutes. Firing round coming up.
Okay.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. Tonight's topic is immigration. We got Eric Katz with us. He's an expert in immigration. He's an immigration consultant, has been for a couple of decades, runs his own immigration company, and has been really open about his views, both from an economic standpoint, infrastructure standpoint, as well as an immigration strategy standpoint. I got to ask you a couple questions, though, Eric, if I could. So some people have told me that even though there's so much press on Donald Trump and ICE deporting people in the United States, that we actually deport people at a higher percentage on a per capita basis in Canada than the United States does. And it's because we don't renew people's student visas. We don't renew the temporary foreign worker visas, that we don't give everyone that wants a permanent residency. And therefore we ask them to leave. Is that true? Do we actually deport a whole bunch of people in Canada?
Of course we do. I mean, most of them, most of the major number of them would either be those who came here and committed crimes in Canada, served their time in Canada, and then usually within a few weeks before their release, there's a hearing to see whether or not they have the right to stay in Canada. But generally, they're deported back to their country. When you talk about the students and other people, a lot of the students are past the expiry date of their student visas. So they're what they call it overstaying. It can be the same with people who are working. So I would say that those people are removed because they're not criminals, but they've removed because they've stayed beyond.
How are they
And they
removed? Do we
haven't.
have the equivalent of ICE that's swooping in and picking them up and putting them in detention centers and taking them to the airport? Like, we don't hear about this in Canada. How are they removed?
Well, I'll tell you because probably the first 5 years when I didn't have really any connections in the corporate world, I was running to the detention center every week or down to the tribunals appeal division of the Immigration and Refugee Board. So there are detention centers in Canada. There's one. My office is at Islington and 401, and then all I do is cross Islington. It turns into Rexdale Boulevard, and that's the main detention center at 385 Rexdale. So often, if somebody has overstayed or they haven't showed up for a hearing, there's a national warrant made for their arrest. If and when they're found, they're generally taken to a detention center, or if the city or town doesn't have a detention center, it would be the local jail, and there would be a hearing at the jail. And if they're found not to be in status in Canada, because everybody must have a legal status in Canada. So if they haven't complied with the government and they haven't extended their stay in any legal manner, then they're put in the detention centers. But I can tell you that from what I've seen, because I've really only been to the detention centers in Toronto, once down at the border, they're it's not like a detention center in the United States that maybe has like 7,000 and they're run by private corporations. So basically what they do is they put them on a plane and they're sent home. They're not usually held for there longer than a few weeks. I'm not saying it's humane, but I don't think the possibility of being lost in the system like people are in the US or random without any logical reason. We don't throw people in the clink, so to speak, like they do in the US.
But
And I think
it is a detention center that's like a prison.
it is a prison. Yeah.
Okay, let me ask you a couple more questions. I've been told by a guest that I had that there's been too much focus on gross immigration, not enough on net immigration. And the reason why is they said that 20 to 25% of the people, and the best people that are coming into Canada with cash, capital to invest, and with those high qualifications, actually leave to either go to the United States or go back to their home country. And it's because either they came to Canada as a stepping stone to the United States, or when they came from India, Pakistan, wherever, and tried to, start a business, integrate into the country, et cetera, they weren't welcome. They weren't integrated. And so therefore they went back. And they said, the problem is that 20 to 25% of the immigration numbers that we lose are the best people, are the highest qualified people, are the people that have got capital that wanted to become entrepreneurs, et cetera. And that we need to do a far better job of keeping the people that we want to bring into this country and come into this country by way of the point system. And we do a terrible job in that regard. How do you respond, sir?
Well, first of all, I agree with whoever you spoke to 200%. A lot of people came here, when I started in the mid to late 90s, we had a federal entrepreneur program where primarily people were coming from around the world. They were, for your listeners, I don't want to sound crass, but they had funds, I would say, in the low millions, and they would buy franchises. It's an instant cash flow, whether it was a pizza or something else or a Tim Hortons. They were buying them, but they closed that program. Don't ask me why they did, but they closed it. And they had very strict terms and conditions because when they came here, they were given a work permit and they had 3 years to prove that they had started the business and that the business was actively and actually in business. Okay, so there was no offices that were rented, in Mississauga City Center. These were people that were actually staying, and those people, if they moved to the US or if they came home, was possibly because they couldn't meet the terms and conditions because they were too harsh, or maybe things changed in the economy and nobody was eating pizza anymore. I'm not trying to be facetious, but things change. So that's gone. There is no program across Canada for entrepreneurs. I think there's one in.
Why not? Like we should be. If people want to come and invest in our country, why shouldn't we want them to?
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm just saying everything is set by the government, and not just the liberals. Because I remember we had a federal investor program. This was for the high net worth individuals, and Quebec had because they have their own control. They had a program, and Jason Kenney said, "I don't want to bring these people in anymore because they don't contribute to the economy." Can you imagine that? People with millions of dollars don't, of course they want to keep their money invested, but a lot of those people still invest, not just on their homes, but also in other people's businesses. So we don't have that. Quebec only had the investor program until Legault came into power in Quebec. That's gone. So I've had to resort, the only legal path to getting people here from overseas to invest is through the intracompany transfer program. So if they can show that they have a business overseas, they can prove their net worth, they can prove sustainable income from the company, usually a generational family company, then they'll get a work permit to open up a company in Canada and continue on doing something related to what they're doing there. Last year, the regulations changed federally, and because there was a certain amount of fraud, which damaged a lot of companies that were legitimate, they changed the rule. You could no longer make Canada your first destination as an international company. You had to have another multinational company related to your company where you live in a different company before you could apply for that work permit. So consider this. Consider you have a family business, say, since World War II in Italy, and you gross maybe 15 million euros a year, 20 million euros a year. There's a lot of families like that over there. But you don't have another location, say in France or something like that. I can't bring that person in. And when they tell me they want permanent residence as well, I said, okay, but I can't get you the 200 points for being a senior executive.
Even if they wanted to transfer either all or some of their $15 million Italian business to Canada. It's crazy.
Well, I mean, there is a special program called the Startup Visa, but if you're talking about a winery, coming in, unless they've invented some innovative technology that would help the Canada or other countries to export that technology, it's old world technology. So I don't think it would satisfy the criteria.
Crazy.
And I'll just end it there.
A couple of quick last questions. We're running out of time. Illegal immigration. Do we have much illegal immigration into Canada? That obviously is the big concern in the United States. Is it a concern in Canada?
Absolutely. I think every Western nation whether it's in Europe, North America, or parts of Asia, worries about illegal immigration. In Europe, you have people taking boats from North Africa to Europe and then coming across the channel. And so these issues, I think we're sheltered a lot more than they are over there because of we have two massive oceans on three sides. But the open gaps, I think I had sort of mentioned before, are slowly closing because I think there's been agreement, with the previous U.S. and the current U.S. administration. We've got to plug the holes for security reasons because some of these illegal immigrants are criminals and possibly terrorists.
Some people are worried that the harsher Trump's coming down on illegal immigrants in the United States, what it's going to do is it's going to mean a lot of these people that don't want to go back to El Salvador, Nicaragua, or wherever are going to come to Canada. Is that something that's happening? Are you worried about it?
No, I'm not as worried as I was when nothing was being done about it under the previous prime minister because literally nothing was done. And so, I remember back in the day when the Harper government was in power, there was like an average 20,000 refugees coming to Canada. And I think, aside from the special cases in Syria and Afghanistan, plus the people who were coming illegally across the borders, there could be maybe like 80 to 100,000 cases in the backlog at any time. It could be more. They put a stop on Mexicans that had a visa to come to Canada. Sorry, Mexicans only needed an ETA. So for your listeners who don't know, that's an electronic authority to come to Canada. You pay $7 online, and as long as you have no criminal record, that's your visa to get into Canada. And then they stopped doing it last spring because they had to reimpose the requirement to apply for an actual visitor's visa for all Mexicans, unless they had a valid Canadian visa for in the previous 10 years, either from Canada or the US. So, and most of those claims were false. Either they were coming for economic reasons or primarily just economic reasons. So a lot of those cases were refused or withdrawn. So I think we're seeing now, whether or not we are a fentanyl problem or not with the U.S., I think they want us to be a little more serious about keeping our borders safe, both for themselves and in turn it would be for us as well.
Eric Katz, this has been a very helpful and interesting conversation. I appreciate it. If people want to contact you for some immigration advice, maybe because they're a company or maybe they're someone that's here, or maybe they know someone that wants to come here, what's the best way for them to contact you? To go to your website?
Sure, they can go to my website. All my numbers and emails are there. Migrationtocanada.com is the URL.
I think that Canada has been built on immigration, and I think that we need immigration in the future. Eric has pointed out, intellectual IT concentrations within the Greater Toronto Area. He's talked about the people that are going to work on building our energy infrastructure across the country. I think the natural resource sector. I think that we're talking about a dramatic increase in housing. We need skilled trades that are going to be building that housing. I think immigration is great. I think we need it because of the aging baby boom, and we need to have a workforce that are going to be working, paying the taxes that are going to fund me and others in our old age. And I think we want and need a dynamic economy. We've got to do it in a smart way. We got to do it in a reasonable increase way. We got to make sure that people learn English or French and can have language skills and integrate into our culture, into our community, into our country. I think we need to welcome them. I think we need to make sure that we, have a great community. And so I think that joining the community ends up being critically important. I think we need to make sure that we don't bring in too much, that we ever get close to what I think are some of the racist attitudes that you see in the United States. And I don't think we've got that. And I think that's good. I think that the dynamism of Toronto, of Mississauga, where we have an incredible diverse population is wonderful. And I think that diversity is key for understanding the trade sectors that we need to be to working in the future, the new opportunities, the new ideas. I think diversity and inclusion is critically important in that regard, because if we all look like Eric and I, we're all going to be making similar decisions, and we need different people that have different backgrounds, different experiences, different cultural, linguistic, geographic experiences that are going to challenge us to think of how we move forward. So I think immigration is critically important to building the country we want to create. We need smart people like Eric to make sure that, and smart people like Eric running our immigration system to make sure that we manage this in a judicious process. That's my 2 cents. Thanks for joining me, Eric. Thanks for joining me, everyone. I remind you, I'm on every Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my podcasts are on my website, briancrombie.com, on social media, on YouTube, as soon as the radio show goes to air. Good night. Appreciate you joining me.